Welcome back, everyone! This is part 19 of Genius Martial Art Trainer, covering the latest chapters. If you missed the previous parts, you can find the links in the I button and down in the description. With that said, let's jump straight into today's recap. The scene shifted to Sichuan province, at the Tang clan. The Qing sect's elder, known as the Tempest Swordsman, arrived alongside Nun Myoljiol, the Ma sect's first disciple, and their respective disciples. As they entered, they saw members of the Shaolin Temple and the Heavenly Merchant Guild already present. The Qing sect elder shouted angrily, declaring that by law, all matters occurring in Sichuan must be resolved within Sichuan itself. He questioned what business the Shaolin Temple and the Heavenly Merchant Guild from Hunan Province had there, accusing them of ignoring Sichuan's laws. Ryuseowa, the daughter of the Heavenly Merchant Guild's leader and the overall representative of the guild's body treatment clinic, stepped forward. Clasping her hands respectfully, she apologized and explained that the Heavenly Merchant Guild had come only to provide medical treatment, having heard that many people in the region were suffering from bone and joint ailments. The Qing sect elder shouted again, accusing her of openly declaring an intention to interfere in Sichuan's affairs. At that moment, Haiyan, the leader of the Shaolin External Hall who had come to capture Mujin and his companions, stepped forward. He calmly replied that Shaolin had no intention of interfering in Sichuan's affairs, but neither could they stand by and allow an unnecessary fight to break out. Hearing this, the Qing sect elder, the Ma sect's first disciple, and their followers grew tense. They turned to leave, and the Qing sect elder shouted that for the sake of Shaolin's reputation, they would overlook the matter this time, but warned that it would not be so simple next time. Haiyan responded evenly, saying that if fate allowed, they would meet again. Silently observing everything, Patriarch Tang Peijin thought to himself that Shaolin's reputation was truly well-earned. With aura alone, they had driven back both the Qing sect and the Ma sect. After letting out a sigh, Haiyan turned to Patriarch Tang and said that now the urgent matter was settled, he wished to see Mujin and the remaining children. Tang Peijin became visibly nervous at those words. Meanwhile, a person approached Ryuseowa with a letter and whispered that warrior Kang Hyuk had asked him to deliver it to her. Kang Hyuk was a false name Mujin was using. She accepted the letter. At the same time, Tang Peijin informed Haiyan that Mujin and his companions were no longer there and had already fled. Ryuseowa opened the letter and began to read. Inside, it said that he hoped she had been well. He wrote that he had been traveling with his companions, settling many matters along the way, and thus had not found time to visit. However, he believed the traces of his journey would prove helpful to both Shaolin and the Heavenly Merchant Guild. When the day came that they met again, he promised to send word in advance, and until then, he wished for her safety. The letter was signed by Mujin. The scene then shifted to a distant forest. Mujin stopped the carriage so they could rest, and the group began eating calorie bars made by Mujin with Tangak's help. Mujin remarked that since they had come this far, their senior brothers would not be able to pursue them immediately. The horses were tired as well, so resting for a while was necessary. Mugung asked where exactly they were. Mu Kyung commented that since Mujin had been leading the horses, he should know. Meanwhile, Muyul and Chung Su were unloading items from the carriage. Mujin unfolded the map and admitted that he had not had a chance to look at it earlier because everyone had urged him to hurry. After examining it, he pointed to Guangxi province and told them that was where they were. The others reacted in shock, saying they had never even heard of such a place. Mujin explained that of course they had not, since Guangxi was an unorthodox sect region. Hearing this, they panicked, shouting that they had entered unorthodox territory. Mujin reminded them that they were the ones who had told him to hurry anywhere at all. They replied that they had been afraid the elders would chase them down, and that if they were caught, Shaolin would show no mercy. Mujin silently apologized in his heart. The truth was that he had brought them to Guangxi on purpose. There was someone there they needed to recruit as an ally, and they also had to crush the members of the New Heavens faction along the way. It could not be helped. Aloud, Mujin reassured them that even if it was unorthodox territory, nothing too terrible would happen in broad daylight. Eventually, they calmed themselves, reasoning that Guangxi was still a place where people lived, and running into green forest bandits did not happen that often. Almost immediately after, they heard footsteps approaching. Turning toward the sound, they saw a group of 5 bandits, led by a bald man. One of the bandits sneered, asking why monks who should be in a temple were wandering through their territory. The leader laughed and suggested that perhaps Buddha had sent them as a gift. Mujin and his companions noted internally how quickly the bandits had appeared after being mentioned. The bandit leader announced himself as Crazed Bear Meng Rang, the nightmare and terror of Guangxi province. He mocked them and leapt into the air, swinging his club down toward them. A short time later, Meng Rang was sitting on the ground with a battered face, trembling as he begged forgiveness. He admitted his foolishness and acknowledged their strength. Mu Jin replied flatly that Meng Rang was simply weak. Mu Kyung commented that this must be the level of Green Forest bandits, who had never properly learned martial arts. Magong asked what they should do with them. Meng Rang weakly muttered that Buddha taught mercy to all living beings, only to be immediately silenced by Magong. Mu Jin, however, was already thinking ahead. To keep the New Heavens faction in check within Guangxi, their small group alone would not be enough. He approached Meng Rang and asked where the largest green forest stronghold in the region was. Some time later, the scene shifted to the largest green forest stronghold in Guangxi, Great Tiger Stronghold. A group dressed as bandits arrived at its gates. The guards shouted at them to identify themselves and warned them to leave if they valued their lives. It was revealed that the newcomers were Mu Jin and his companions. Standing at the front, Magong shouted that they were the Black Bear sect and had come to take over Great Tiger Stronghold that very day. Earlier, Mu Jin had proposed disguising themselves as bandits. Mu Kyung had been shocked, asking if they were really pretending to be Green Forest bandits. Mu Jin had explained that it was like hiding a leaf within the forest. By pretending to be a Green Forest group, they could avoid pointless conflict, overthrow other bandit groups, and protect the people of Guangxi. Mu Kyung had reluctantly accepted the logic. Magong, however, had initially refused, declaring that as a proud member of the Great Shaolin Temple, he would not pretend to be Green Forest. Mu Jin had simply told him that if he did it, he could be the leader. At that, Magong had immediately agreed, blushing as he accepted the role. Now, at Great Tiger Stronghold, Magong shouted that he was the Black Bear sect's leader, the Bear Fist Destroyer, and demanded that the leader of Great Tiger Stronghold come out and face him. A guard scoffed at the insolence, but before he could act, a huge man emerged from within the stronghold. Placing a hand on the guard's head, the man told him to step aside. The guard immediately obeyed. The towering leader approached Magong, his physique far larger and more imposing. Magong could not help but think about how enormous the man was. The leader sneered, saying he had never heard of any Black Bear sect. He mocked the idea of leaders fighting over ownership like Orthodox sects, declaring that Green Forest only took what it wanted, and now, it would take their lives. With that, the bandits surrounded Mu Jin's group. Some time later, the leader was sitting on the ground, his face swollen and defeated. He begged forgiveness, admitting that he had failed to recognize their greatness. Mu Jin repeated calmly that the man was simply weak. Then he turned to Magong and told him that now they were properly dressed and prepared, it was time for the chief to say a few words. Magong cleared his throat and declared that starting that day, Great Tiger Stronghold would fall under the banner of the Black Bear sect. He announced himself as their new leader, the Bear Fist Destroyer. Watching him, Mu Jin thought that Magong seemed to be genuinely enjoying himself. With that, he knew the mission to crush the New Heavens faction had truly begun. Some time later, Mu Jin explained the truth to his companions. New Heavens was the root of nearly every tragedy within the Geijiang universe. Contrary to what one might expect, their first targets had not been the great Murim clans or the major sects, but the merchant guilds of Murim. Their operations had proceeded in absolute secrecy, and before anyone realized what was happening, Murim's most prominent merchant guilds had fallen completely into New Heaven's grasp. Using those guilds, New Heavens moved enormous sums of money and vast quantities of military supplies. To transport these resources covertly, they had established a disguised organization, the North Wind Escort Establishment. While eating a bar beside him, Magong remarked that this meant the North Wind Escort Establishment was the group they were waiting for. Mu Jin confirmed it. He reminded Magong of the group they had encountered back at the Tai sect, the ones who possessed the Divine Thief Tomb's map. During his time at the Tang clan, Mu Jin had heard many things, one of which was that the North Wind Escort Establishment was closely tied to New Heavens. After chewing for a moment, Magong asked when they would arrive. Mu Jin replied that he had no way of knowing. It was boring to wait, but they were allowing all other travelers to pass normally. Seeing the relief on people's faces made it worthwhile. Inwardly, Magong noted that the Green Forest bandits had not looked pleased at all. Just then, the former leader of Great Tiger Stronghold arrived and reported that a signal had come from the scouts at the forest trail's entrance. The North Wind Escort Establishment mentioned by Mu Jin was approaching. Hearing this, Mu Jin smiled, turned to Magong, and said that they were here. Magong smiled back. Before long, The North Wind Escort establishment's caravan arrived at the Great Tiger Stronghold's toll point. Mujin, Mugum, and the bandits of Great Tiger Stronghold moved to stop the carriages. An elderly man from the escort stepped forward, clasped his hands respectfully, and greeted them. He introduced himself as Jang Wan Sam, the chief escort leader of the North Wind Escort establishment, and said he looked forward to working with them. Mujin and the others remained silent, staring coldly at Jang Wan Sam. Jang Wan Sam produced a pouch filled with coins and explained that it was the toll payment, adding that they had included a bit more than the standard rate. Mujin replied that it was not enough. The toll fee had increased, and they would need to pay 10 times that amount. Jang Wan Sam was taken aback and protested that such a sum was impossible for a small escort establishment like theirs. Mujin stepped closer and calmly said that if that was the case, there was no helping it. He leaned in and whispered that Jang Wan Sam should offer a tribute instead of a toll, remarking that one of the wagons reeked of something very valuable. Jang Wan Sam laughed and remarked that they were no ordinary green forest rabble. Suddenly, he flung the coin pouch toward Mujin to obstruct his vision and followed up with a surprise sword attack. Mujin barely avoided it by bending backward. Shocked, Jang Wan Sam asked how Mujin had dodged the strike. Mugum called out anxiously, asking whether Mujin was all right. Before Mugum could do anything else, he heard shouting behind him. Turning around, he saw the bandits of Great Tiger Stronghold being attacked by members of the North Wind Escort establishment. The bandits cried out in confusion, asking why the escorts were attacking them out of nowhere, and how they could be so impossibly strong. Gritting his teeth, Mugum muttered that he had not even seen them move. When had they gotten behind them? Meanwhile, facing Jang Wan Sam, Mujin glanced back at the escort fighters. He realized they had used phantom steps and dark shadow arts. These men had already become new heavens hunting dogs. Mugum rushed toward his subordinates, apologizing to Mujin and saying he would leave Jang Wan Sam to him. Shouting at the escorts, Mugum demanded to know what they were doing to his brothers. He immediately ordered the bandits of Great Tiger Stronghold to gather around him. They obeyed at once. When one escort tried to strike a bandit, Mugum intercepted the blow, kicking the attacker away. He declared loudly that anyone who touched his subordinates would answer to him, Bare Fist Destroyer, chief of Great Tiger Stronghold. Watching this, Mujin thought that Mugum was far too immersed in his role. Jang Wan Sam then shouted at Mujin, demanding to know who they really were. Judging by their aura and stances, he accused them of being Shaolin monks, though their grown hair made it difficult to tell. Mujin calmly replied that his identity hardly mattered at the moment. Instead, he asked what about Jang Wan Sam himself, a new heavens bastard. Jang Wan Sam fell silent, confused, and asked what Mujin meant. Smiling, Mujin asked if he wanted him to repeat it. Angered by the insult, Jang Wan Sam charged forward, shouting that he would tear Mujin limb from limb until he confessed how he knew that name. He swung his ore-infused sword repeatedly, but Mujin avoided every strike with precise footwork. Leaping into the air, Jang Wan Sam unleashed a powerful vertical strike using his sword energy, Azure Heavens. Mujin smiled, hardened his skin with the Iron Guard technique, and blocked the attack head-on. Jang Wan Sam's sword shattered on impact. Stunned, Jang Wan Sam demanded to know how Mujin's body could be so durable. Mujin did not answer. He gathered aura into his right fist and struck Jang Wan Sam directly in the face. Blood sprayed as Jang Wan Sam collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Mujin let out a sigh, remarking that it was fortunate Jang Wan Sam had not been that difficult to deal with. Mugum approached and asked anxiously if Mujin, no, the vice chief, was all right, and whether the man was dead. Mujin replied that he had only knocked him unconscious. Smiling, he ordered everyone to see what the escorts had been hiding, to load the wounded into the wagon, and to return to Great Tiger Stronghold. As they moved out, Mugum reflected that the leader of the North Wind Escort establishment had been strong, and even the escorts themselves were far from ordinary. He wondered just how far Mujin's monstrous abilities had grown. Mujin gave the order to head back. That night, at Great Tiger Stronghold, now renamed the Black Bear Sect, Mujin's group gathered after completing their assigned tasks. Mu Kyung reported that the tribute had consisted only of clothes, which they had burned as Mujin instructed. However, something unexpected had been hidden inside. Mugum remarked that hiding it within clothes made sense, as it was the safest place. Chung Su added that he could feel an ominous energy leaking from the item. Mujin realized that his suspicions had been correct. They had been hiding something, but he had never expected to actually see it, dragon-scale armor. He could not confirm whether it truly came from a dragon, but it was the symbolic possession of the Wolf King, one of New Heaven's 7 captains, and the strongest divine-grade armor in existence. He had thought the North Wind Escort establishment was transporting something from the Underworld faction, never something like this. If used properly, it could deal a massive blow to New Heavens. Breaking the silence, Mugung asked what they should do next. Were they going to stay and fight the North Wind Escort establishment? Mujin replied that had been the original plan. However, with this unexpected discovery, they needed to change course. They would leave the mountain immediately and head for the Minor Azure sect. Late at night, at the Guangxi Black Bear sect, Chung Su stood watch atop a nearby hill, perfectly still as his eyes scanned the surroundings. Ever since that day, the headaches had never truly stopped. He couldn't tell whether it was simple exhaustion from the long journey, or the lingering pain of having lost someone precious. Either way, the ache left his heart heavy and his mood steeped in quiet sorrow. Suddenly his senses flared. Hostile auras, more than one, were approaching from a distance, not far at all. His expression tightened. The feeling was familiar. He knew immediately that he had to warn the others. Meanwhile, a group rushed through the darkness toward the Black Bear sect's territory. They were members of the North Wind Escort establishment, led by its owner, Dan Chianak. Anxiety churned in his chest as he moved. Something was terribly wrong. No signal had arrived confirming the escort goods had reached their destination. Of all times for things to go wrong, it had to be now, while the dragon scale armor was being transported. No matter the cost, he had to recover it. Then, Dan Chianak noticed 2 figures standing calmly in the middle of the path ahead. He raised a hand, halting his men. "Who are you two?" As they stepped into the light, their identities became clear: Mujin and Mugung. Mujin casually tapped Mugung on the shoulder. "See? I told you these bastards would show up." Earlier that day, Mujin had warned him that the North Wind escorts would come back. Mugung had been skeptical. "You really think they'd dare attack again, in broad daylight?" "Of course," Mujin had replied. "For something this important, someone would be keeping watch. They must have realized the dragon scale armor went missing, even if they don't know who took it. If they fail to retrieve it, their heads will roll." Mugung had frowned. "Is it really that important?" Mujin had nodded grimly. "Its owner isn't some ordinary madman. They'll send someone at least on the level of a commanding head escort." After a moment of thought, Mugung had asked quietly, "If that happens, can I fight their leader?" Mujin had looked surprised. "I don't mind, but why?" "I felt something," Mugung had said, recalling Mujin's earlier battle with Jang Wan Sam. Now, in the present, Dan Chianak roared and charged forward. "You fucking idiots! How dare you touch his property? You have no idea who you're dealing with. You're running straight toward your own deaths." Mugung stepped forward to meet him. Dan Chianak's sword slashed through the air with terrifying speed. Mugung ducked beneath the strike, his heart pounding. Even without revealing his true identity, he could tell, this man was faster than expected. "I can't use the Rulai Divine Palm outright," Mugung thought. "But I can borrow its essence, channel that explosive force into my fist. All I need is one opening." Dan Chianak struck again, the blade aimed straight for Mugung's neck. "Now!" Mugung slipped beneath the swing and surged forward, closing the distance in an instant. His fist, packed with compressed force, slammed into Dan Chianak's abdomen. The impact echoed like thunder. Dan Chianak coughed violently, blood spraying from his mouth as he collapsed to his knees, then fell face first into the dirt, unconscious. Mugung exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. A slow clap sounded behind him. He turned to see Mujin, who had already defeated every escort Dan Chianak had brought along. "That was impressive," Mujin said with a grin. "You applied the Rulai Divine Palm into a fist technique, exploding fist strike, right?" Mugung chuckled proudly. "Of course. I am the Bear Fist Destroyer." Mujin laughed. "How long are you planning to keep that title?" As he laughed, Mujin studied him with quiet pride. To transform the Rulai Divine Palm into a fist technique on the spot, Mugung's adaptability was remarkable. In a single exchange, he had created a new martial skill. He truly had grown. At that moment, a voice called out from the darkness. "Are you two all right?" They turned to see Chung Su approaching, concern etched across his face. "Taoist Chung Su?" Mujin asked. "What brings you here so late?" "That's my question," Chung Su replied. "I sensed hostile auras and rushed over. When I felt yours nearby, I feared something had happened." Mujin gestured toward Dan Chianak's unconscious body. Well, this is awkward. These are the people we were waiting for. Chung Su's eyes widened. That attire, North Wind Escort Establishment? That's right, Mujin said calmly. Our business here is finished. Once the sun rises, we'll abandon the carriage and leave. Mugung hesitated. What about the treasure inside? We won't use it, Mujin replied. It'll only slow us down. From here on, speed matters more. He paused, then added softly, we come into this world empty-handed, and we leave empty-handed. In his heart, Mujin knew the truth. The treasure would scatter with the former Great Tiger Stronghold bandits, traded across cities and regions. That chaos would buy them time stolen from New Heaven's pursuit. Elsewhere, at Yahello Wolf Fang Stronghold, a trembling subordinate knelt before the Wolf King, one of New Heaven's 7 captains, a future legend of the Geijiang universe. The dragon scale armor has been stolen, the man reported, cold sweat dripping down his face. We're searching all of Guangxi province. The Wolf King chuckled softly. How troublesome, he murmured. A chess piece meant for my board has slipped away. The Cloud Fragrance Hall Master dies, and now the armor he gifted us is gone. Why am I surrounded only by incompetence? We'll retrieve it, the man vowed. Without fail. The Wolf King moved. In a single motion, his blade flashed, and the man's head rolled to the ground. He has spoken. The Wolf King muttered coldly. I suppose it's time I moved myself. Run while you can, little rats. I'll mince you all the same. They departed from the Black Bear sect and began marching toward the Asura sect. After some time, they reached the crest of a hill. From there, a vast city spread out before their eyes. Mu Kyung squinted at the view below. Have we arrived? Mujin nodded. Yeah. As he gazed at the city, his thoughts grew heavy. This was Gillan, in Guangxi province. From here on, everything would become complicated. One of their main reasons for coming to Guangxi had been to wipe out New Heaven's forces, and in that regard, they had largely succeeded. Now, only one objective remained, to bring back 2 people believed to be within the Minor Azure sect. The problem was that reaching the Minor Azure sect meant passing directly through Gillan. And Gillan was no ordinary city. It was the territory of Hyok Jingang, one of the 10 great martial masters of the world, and one of New Heaven's central strongholds. A city that would later become the largest slave market in the Central Plains. A truly wretched place. Some time later, the group walked through Gillan's streets. Mu Kyung looked around, puzzled. I thought a city ruled by unorthodox sects would feel different. But on the surface, it doesn't seem much different from anywhere else. Muyo glanced at him. What kind of place were you expecting? I figured it'd be chaos everywhere. Mu Kyung replied. Unorthodox types stirring up trouble nonstop. Muyo chuckled. That actually sounds fun. That's not what I meant. Mu Kyung sighed. Anyway, I guess wherever people live, it's all the same. As he spoke, a child suddenly slammed into him and fell to the ground. Mu Kyung and Muyo immediately turned back. Hey, are you hurt? Kid, are you okay? But the child only lay there, trembling in fear. Muyo frowned. Something felt off. In a shaking voice, the child whispered, Please save me. Mom. Dad. Muyo stiffened. Something about him doesn't seem right. At that moment, a man hurried over. Oh my, thank you, he said quickly. He's my son. I scolded him earlier and he ran off. Thanks to you youngsters, I didn't have to chase him down. He reached out to grab the child. Come on now. I'll stop scolding you. Let's go home. Before he could lift him, Mu Kyung stepped forward, his voice suddenly cold. Wait. Are you really his father? The man's expression hardened instantly. You should have just walked away. He snarled. You stupid bastards. At his signal, several thugs appeared, surrounding Mujin's group with clubs and blades. So you found the one who ran, one of them said. Then they noticed the others. Who are these punks? You idiots, let go of him and get out of Gillan. Stop sticking your noses into other people's business. Muyo smiled faintly. This is exactly the kind of city you were imagining, Mu Kyung. Mu Kyung sighed. Yeah. He tightened his grip on the man's arm, the one claiming to be the child's father. Well, if they're committing crimes this openly, it makes things easier. He glanced at Mujin. It's fine if we restrain them and ask a few questions, right? The man screamed. My arm! It's going to break! Mujin smiled calmly. If you were going to do it anyway, why ask? Do whatever you want. Not long after, the thugs lay scattered across the ground, groaning, their faces swollen and bruised. The leader trembled. I'm sorry, great heroes. I'll tell you everything. We're just a merchant group operating in Gillan. Mukyung snorted. And you expect me to believe that? Looks like you still have enough strength to lie. Mujin stepped in. It's not entirely false. You are merchants. It's just that what you sell is special. His eyes sharpened. You're slave traders. And you're affiliated with the Unorthodox Alliance. The man went pale and fell silent. Muya looked at the child, then back at Mujin. If they're slave traders, does that mean this kid is? Mu Kyung didn't wait for the answer. He smacked the man's bald head with his wooden staff, grabbed him by the collar, and snarled. Stop hiding things and talk. There are other kids too, aren't there? Where's your base? The scene shifted to an annex building of the Gillan Merchant Guild. Inside, a sword slick with blood was withdrawn from a corpse. The man holding it spoke coldly. Owner Hyo Mayan. What happened to the child? Hyo Mayan clasped his hands nervously. I apologize, honored guest. Seeing how late it is, something must have gone wrong. Shall I bring you another child instead? The man sheathed his sword slowly. Have you ever heard this saying? When you buy a new sword, what you cut first determines your fortune. Hyo Mayan hesitated. My knowledge is lacking. I wouldn't know. They say the greatest fortune comes from cutting down an entire family. The man continued calmly. That's why I paid a fortune, for the parents and the child together. What meaning is there in cutting some other child? Hyo Mayan bowed deeply. So that's what you intended? I failed to recognize your wishes. I will prepare another family immediately. You'd better, the man replied coldly. My patience is running. A loud crash echoed from outside, cutting him off. He frowned. What is that noise? Hyo Mayan stiffened. I apologize. Something must have happened outside. I'll check at once. He flung open the door. Hey! What's all this noise? We have an honored guest. Before he could finish, Chung Su burst forward, his sword flashing. Hyo Mayan drew his blade, but it shattered instantly, sent flying as he was hurled backward and slammed into the floor. The guest narrowed his eyes. What's going on? Hyo Mayan lay stunned. I didn't even see the strike, an incredible martial master. Chung Su stepped into the room. Mujin and the others had headed for the main building where the children were supposedly held. Chung Su had checked the annex just in case, and found only a handful of guards. Now 2 corpses lay nearby, blood pooling across the floor. If I'd known it would be like this, he thought grimly, I would have gone to the main building instead. Hyo Mayan struggled to his feet. Who are you? Do you even know where you are, pulling something like this? Chung Su barely heard him. The horrific scene triggered something deep inside him. A sudden headache pierced his skull, and fragmented memories surged forth. Dead bodies piled around him, his sword soaked in blood, himself as a child standing among the carnage. He clutched his head. What, is this memory? Seeing his strange behavior, both Hyo Mayan and the guest hesitated in confusion. Chung Su's thoughts spiraled. Voices echoed in his mind. In the memory, a child looked at him and said, To survive, you have to kill. Chung Su's eyes slowly turned red. His expression twisted into something cold, unfamiliar. To survive, he murmured, gripping his sword tighter. I have to kill. Genius protagonists, overwhelming growth, and legendary battles, this is your battlefield. We're just steps away from 20,000 subscribers. Subscribe now and rise with us.